want to say hello to everybody and thanks for joining. I could not believe how many people are attending and how many questions we have. So I don't know if we're going to get through all of them tonight. We might have to have another Q&A again, but I'm thrilled because that means everybody's working on their notes and their marketing and everything. And we've got some really good advanced questions tonight. So that's pretty awesome as well. So I'm very excited to be on with everyone. And I do hope y'all are enjoying the spring weather, and this is a great time to be doing notes. It's exciting because we're moving into the summer. We want to get our marketing out before summer hits. June and July and August tend to be slower months, so we want to get our marketing out right away before people start going on vacation. And then usually September through the end of the year really pick up again. But I will tell you that this past year has been the most unpredictable year ever. It's also been the best year I've ever had in notes. So it is a great time to be doing it. It's just that I can't predict what's going to happen. I think there's so many outside factors that are affecting things. But I think you'll find that there's no better strategy to use in today's market than notes. Okay, are we ready to go? Did everybody get in?
I think so. Yeah, we got a bunch of people on here. Probably that's still got people coming in, but that's okay. I think we're at 7:05. Let's start it up.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being on tonight. And Matthew, are you going to read the questions for me, or would you like for me to just go through them?
Yeah, I'll ask them.
Okay.
Why don't we start with some marketing questions, Donna?
Okay. Hey, and by the way, just skip the real hard ones for me, okay?
Uh-oh. So if anyone stumps you,
I'm just kidding.
If you get stumped tonight, is there an award? We're giving your money away, or?
What should we give them? We'll think of something.
All right.
3 months of coaching?
All right, let's see if you
get well, wait a minute. The problem is that there's some things, I've already looked at the questions, and some of them there aren't specific answers to, so those would not count. I mean, there are some things that I don't think we can do that.
Okay.
Because it's just the nature of some of the questions, and people go, oh, you should have known that, when there's no way I could know it. So I promise you that you'll get your share of information. With 30 years of experience, there's not too many things about notes that I'm not aware of. Cool. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but anyway.
Okay. All right, let's jump in. So let's start with some marketing questions. So Carl asked, what should I do before I even start marketing? Do I need business cards, a website, etc.? What should I know before talking to leads?
Okay, well, I always suggest that you get your business cards. That's one of the first things I would do, particularly if you are going to the local RIA meetings or anything like that. And I always attach a business card to my direct mail letters. So for that reason, that would be good. I think it's a great idea for you to put a picture of yourself on your business card and your letter so that people can identify with you. I think it's a great idea to have a website. It does not have to be a real sophisticated website. It's mostly to build credibility. I mean, think about it. Whenever you're doing business with somebody nowadays, don't you usually check out their website first? So in that regard, it would be very wise to have a website. A lot of people ask if they should have an LLC set up before they get started. If you have another LLC set up, you can certainly use that. I guess it depends on the name and what your business purpose is there. I will tell you that whenever I set up an LLC, I always, when you register it with the state, it asks what business you're in. And I always say any legal business, any business that's legal to do in Ohio. I mean, I word it a little nicer than that. So that opens the door that I can do anything I want to in that LLC. But I guess what is important to know about the LLC is if you're just starting out, I wouldn't spend a lot of money setting up an LLC. I would get a deal done, make some money, and then set up the LLC. It is good to have the LLC for asset protection, but it's not essential. You could use a DBA, just create a company name, and you can register that on the Secretary of State's website for like $50 or some nominal fee. And that would be a great way for you to get started. Also, if you are buying to hold in your IRA, then really all you need is a DBA to for your marketing letters. So while it's nice to have an LLC, that is not a critical piece. So I would say that your business cards and a website are probably the most important. Now, I don't know, Matthew, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. If you're going to do the website, put a lead form on there. If someone shows up, you want to get their information if they're interested in selling. Um, we do have the website template on the notebuyer.com on your dashboard. There's a whole page there as an example with some instructions if you want to copy it, or you can use a different web builder and do the layout. But if you have any questions about that, the website, send us an email separately. But Don, I think you covered that pretty well.
Okay, great.
And what's a DBA, Don?
Oh, thank you. A DBA is doing business as. So it's a company name that you use. And in fact, what some people do is like, I'm the original note buyer, LLC. If I wanted to do different marketing campaigns, I might use various company names, just so that it looks like I'm sending letters from different companies. Why would you want to do that? I mean, especially when I always tell you, most people do not respond to marketers until they've been touched 3 times. That's like just what's common in the marketing industry. But sometimes you might want to try something different, or you might want to show, you might want to be your own competition, so they call you instead of somebody else. But I have heard of people doing that. So
just to clarify, what you're saying is that your students need to know everything there is to know about note buying before they talk to somebody.
No. How did you get that? No. That's why you have me. I would be out of business if you did that. No, with the easiest 1, 2, 3 coaching, the idea is that you focus on the marketing, okay? And then you send out your letters, and when you get a response, then you fill out the submission form. And when you submit that to me, that's when your easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching starts. And I'm going to walk you through the whole deal. I evaluate it. I reply with an email saying this is a good note because, or watch out for this, or this might be an issue, but we can get over it by doing this. So I evaluate the note, and then I prepare the quote. It's all written out for you. You could read it. I don't recommend you read it, at least ad lib. But the easiest 1, 2, 3 coaching is as easy as find the note, fill out the submission form, and email it to me. That's the 1, 2, 3, and the rest I walk you through. So that being said, the marketing is the most important. Now, you should have my stimulus program. That was the 8-hour training that I did last March. That is the most thorough marketing teaching training that I have done. So if you have a lot of marketing questions, I really encourage you to go back and listen to the first couple of hours of the stimulus training. Because a lot of the questions that I've gotten, they really are answered right there. So focus on the marketing. There's also role plays in there on dealing with the homeowner or the note seller. There's some a phone script. There's several role plays that will really help you with your initial conversation with the note seller. And if you're really desperate and you need me to help you talk to the note seller, I am happy to do that. But I think most everybody, I mean, it's all about being friendly and approachable, and you have the submission form. It's just a matter of getting that information and getting it down on paper. But by all means, if you feel like you need some help with that, I am happy to get on a call and talk to the note seller. But I have found that 99% of my students have no problem getting the basic information. And even if you don't have everything, at least it gives me something to start with. And if necessary, then I could arrange a call and with you, like we have a three-way with the note seller, and then I can help you get any additional information we might need.
All right, rolling on to the next one. So Tamara had a few questions. First is, how many postcards do you recommend sending out? Is it better to hit 500 list entries multiple times or 1,000 at once? Or
That is a great question. And honestly, I think that is probably the single biggest reason if you're not getting the results that you had hoped for. I would rather see you send out 300 to 500 cards 2 or 3 times rather than 1,000 or 2,000 cards just to all different people, because it is a fact that the average person needs to see a seller, an advertiser 3 times before they finally react to the marketing. And so that's why I suggest that you have a very memorable name or a logo, so that when they get your letter or your postcard, they go, oh, I've already gotten a letter from them. And the thing about it is, if they've gotten multiple letters from you, then they know you're not a fly by night. You know, they say this person's been around. So I would recommend a smaller number of letters and send them. And right now, I would send them once a month. I used to do my letters once a quarter, but the market is so hot right now that I would do it once a month. If you have already sent letters multiple times, I would get a new list and just get 500 names or something, a small list, and I would start fresh and send once a month.
when you say multiple times, Donna, how many times is that? If they have a list and they mailed them 4 times, should they try a new list?
Well, I, I I don't think that that is set in stone. Um, and I think it depends on, did they get some responses but no one bought? Did they get no responses at all? If they got no responses at all, I probably would buy a new list of names. But I used to send out for 2 years, and I sent out once a quarter. So I sent out 8 times to the same people. The only reason that I would encourage you maybe to switch sooner is just because I know the market is hot right now. And if you're not getting a good response, then why not move on to somebody else, you know, to some new folks. But I would mail them at least 3 times before I would give up on them.
But if they have a list of 1,000 and they've only sent twice or 3 times, they should probably send another time or two.
I would send another time, yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, there were a couple other questions about that. And also 1,000 sounds like a lot, but that's, if you send 1,000 letters, 1,000 is a big number, but in a marketing sense, that's not a big number. You need to
It's
keep
not a
going.
big number at all. Now, I used to send 200 letters, and this was way back when you had to do them by hand. And so I would sit down with the kids on Friday night, and while they were watching TV, I would get my letters together and mail them out on Monday morning. And so now sometimes I would get real busy, and then I would have to stagger them out. But pretty much my schedule was that I would send out 200 a week.
Cool. All
And I
right.
was
So
closing 1 to 2 deals a month on that. Also, I noticed a lot of questions about which is preferred, the postcard or the letter. And I have no data on that. I ask people all the time, what did, on the deals that I get in, the leads, what did you use? And it's pretty much neck and neck. Some people swear by the postcards, other people swear by the letter. If you're going to do both, I recommend that you start with the postcard and then follow up with the letter. Okay. If you're planning on doing both of them. If you're absolutely not getting anything, I think that you should send me a copy of what you're sending out. Sometimes it's just like a real blatant thing that if I see it, I can say, yeah, you don't want to do this. Sometimes it's the picture of the people. Um, when you take your photo for your letter or for your business cards and stuff, um, and I am guilty of this, okay? I always thought that everything should be super professional, and I would do the headshot. How do they do that? You know, or I think it's like this or something. I don't know, but you know how a photographer makes you look. And so I always made sure to have professional pictures done. And things have changed, and people want to work with someone who is very approachable. And so what I have found is that the people that get the best responses from their postcards generally have like a selfie. I'm not kidding you. Like just a very friendly selfie, like, you know, smiling and welcoming people to call them. The key is you want to appear approachable. The other thing that I might recommend is that you take your postcard or letter and have a friend that you trust that would give you an honest answer, have them look at it and say, if you got this from me, would you call me? Because like I said, sometimes it's some blatant thing like just a terrible color of ink or some crazy thing like that. Um, so consider that. And you know what? I haven't done this, but I did say this last year, and I may yet do it. I've considered even putting my daughter-in-law, putting her picture on my postcard because she's younger and I think that she would draw a different crowd than I would. And so I thought, you know, I just might do that. And I don't mean to misrepresent. I would have her sign it. And then when they call and they'd say, may I speak to Becky? I would just say, Becky's not available. I'm Donna. Can I help you? You know, you never want to lie about something, but why not use someone if you've got somebody else that you feel like would draw more of a response? Definitely think about using them.
All right. Let's see. Discuss the better postcards. What in the master guide you mentioned using a commemorative stamp. What do you mean by that?
A commemorative stamp is not the customary flag stamp that you always see. Um, a commemorative stamp is usually, those are the kind that collectors keep, and you can buy blocks of them. I used to do that when I was a little girl. And it is a stamp that commemorates a person or a special event. Elvis Presley commemorative stamp, generals in the army, special flowers. I mean, it could be anything. First landing on the moon. And it is a special, unique stamp that's used to commemorate something. The thing about that is that it shows that you're not doing a mass mailing. That's why you want to use a commemorative stamp. And if somebody's got a stack of mail, that commemorative stamp will draw attention to your envelope or your postcard. So I absolutely encourage you to use commemorative stamps. The thing is, do not use anything controversial. And Lord knows we have so many controversies going on nowadays. Make it something very generic that everybody would love. Okay. And I think that you'll get a really positive response and it will help your response rate.
Okay. How important is it to have an address listed on your mail piece or your website?
I don't, well, I don't put an address on the website. Um, as far as a postcard goes, or as far as a postcard goes, I would recommend putting an address on it just because people want to know where you're from. But I don't think it's critical. What I think is critical for the postcard is your phone number and your website. Okay. Um, of course, if you're doing a letter, you're going to put it on stationery, so you would have your return address. And I don't necessarily think you have to have an address on a website, as long as you have a way for them to contact you. And you can do that with the little boxes. Matthew, I know there's a proper name for that. What is it? When they can email you through the website without even giving your email address.
Yeah, contact form.
Yeah, contact form. There you go. Okay.
Let's see here. All right. Muzil asks, what advertising strategies are working right now to locate leads?
You know what? I like all different ones, but without a doubt, it's the direct mail that keeps coming back as being the best one. Um, so here's the thing that I need to explain to you. I don't know if you heard when I first got on, some of you I think joined late, but last year was my best year ever with notes. But it was the strangest thing because it was very much an ebb and flow. Like we just went gangbusters in March, April, and May, and then in the summer, it really and it normally kind of fades off in the summertime because people were on vacation. But I think it was much more noticeable last year because when the quarantine lifted, everybody wanted out of their house. But then it picked back up in September. And it's like, I think, okay, things are slowing down. And then all of a sudden, I get this flood of leads again coming in. So I, all I can say is be consistent. And if something is not working, maybe use a different technique. If your postcards are not working, maybe use a letter, switch it up a little bit, um, put your business card in, do different things like that. Um, Personally, I really like LinkedIn. I've seen a lot of people that get their leads from LinkedIn, even people that have not been in the note business. They've done a really good job of building up their LinkedIn page. And it's not just a matter of creating the page and then just letting it sit there. You want to actively work the LinkedIn and contact the people that you're linked to, tell them what you do, ask them how you might be able to help them, make it a reciprocal thing. And one of the big reasons why I would be doing this, especially now, is because you want to make your contacts and establish them now, because there are going to be foreclosures more than normal coming down the path. And when that does happen, you want to have those contacts already in place. So if you are thinking of going into the non-performing notes, I especially would focus on LinkedIn. And then I have a lot of people who still go on Craigslist, and they either place an ad on Craigslist or they scrape Craigslist by searching various names and or words. Like, think about if you were going to advertise a note for sale, what would you advertise? Seller carryback note for sale, private note for sale, note buyer wanted. Put some of those words, search for those words in Craigslist. So that's another good way to do it. Without a doubt, I know that this is hard for people to believe, but unequivocally, absolutely, positively, your best source is through networking. And it's just that it's so abstract. With direct mail, it's a numbers game. You buy so many leads, you send them out, and you get responses. But with networking, it's a lot different. But when you establish a network, and you get referrals from people, that's where you get ongoing business. You get a lead from a probate attorney and you close a note with a probate attorney. Every time they get a client that has a note, they're going to call you up and say, hey, I've got another note. So you can get a lot of repeat business but through your network. Um, I love networking with the RIA groups because so many investors and landlords, flippers, rehabbers, they create seller carryback notes in the course of their business. And they're always looking for money for the next deal. So, a lot of times they're anxious to sell them. I know maybe the second or third note that I ever bought was because I mailed to the Cincinnati RIA members. I don't know that you can do that anymore. Um, but certainly going to the meeting and passing out business cards, I highly recommend getting a vendor's table at any real estate events, any note buying expos, anything like that, the RIA meetings. Those kind of contacts are invaluable, and not just for people who are wanting to sell notes, but also for investors. So I think that the key to being successful is to insert yourself into the note market. So think about who holds notes, who is interested in notes, and get in touch with those people. I think I told you that one of the things I did the first year I was in business was I rented a booth, a table at the Ohio Real Estate Investors Convention. And oh, that was one of the most worthwhile things I ever did. I was the only note buyer there. Every time they had a break, I had so many people, just flocked around my table. And that was I don't remember the cost now. It was not cheap to rent the table, but I just got a sign that I hung up, behind me. And I made up trifold brochures and business cards, and that's what I had.
Cool. So you already kind of answered some of Naomi's questions. She was asking about, is direct mail still the best route for finding leads? There was a couple of questions here, and she also had mentioned about LinkedIn. What would you say if you're reaching out to real estate investors or real estate attorneys or other professionals on LinkedIn? What would be your icebreaker?
Well, I honestly think that a lot of times it's not what you can do for me, it's what I can do for you. I see that you're a real estate attorney and I'm in real estate. I was wondering how I might help you to get clients. What kind of real estate do you like? Do you like more transactional real estate clients, or are you looking for litigation, real estate litigation? I know a lot of real estate people. How could I help you? In the course of your business, if you ever come across clients who are looking to cash out of notes, I can provide, I guess this is the real thing that will pop. I can provide cash quickly for privately held notes, something like that. I would go along those lines, and I would just play with different phrases and verbiage. But the simple, I pay cash for privately held notes. That's as simple as it gets, and it gets the point across. Okay.
What are some other types of professionals that typically are holding notes, like doctors or?
Well, if you're looking for people holding notes, it would be more like builders, general contractors. Now, you don't want remodelers and swimming pool people and that kind of thing. You don't want those because in general, you don't want to buy notes that were a result of services being done, because if they messed up on the service, then they could offset what's owed on the note. But I'm talking about if you have a general contractor, a builder who sold a house and sold it with seller financing, that would be a great source. A lot of realtors hold notes. If you can find a realtor who is also an investor, that is a great source. My brother and I, early on in our career, we were doing this log home development, and in the course of doing that, we approached a realtor. This was out of town, and and it was really funny because I was trying to be real low key and I'm not telling anybody who I am. And we are sitting in this realtor's office, okay, and he was like the realtor for that small town, small community. And my brother, I think that he's my biggest fan, and he starts saying, do you ever have land contracts or do you sell properties on mortgages? My sister is the note buyer and she buys notes all over the country. And the guy said, seriously? Like privately held notes, like land contracts, you buy those, you pay cash for them? And it's like, oh, Bill, why did you have to say this? And I said, yeah. And he said, see that file cabinet over there? He said, it's filled with land contracts because I also develop land. And so I have carried back a lot of land, or I sold a lot of them on land contracts. So I spent quite a bit of time, came up the following weekend and spent a lot of time going through his deals. Now that was just like a fluke thing. And thank God my brother said something, you know, I don't even remember how many deals I got from that. But if you find a realtor who is also an investor, oh, another one that was really a big one for me came from the Ohio Realtors Convention, and that realtor, he had like 50, more than 50 notes that he held. And so again, it's a great combination. But you can also get people like, well, I love probate attorneys and real estate attorneys, divorce attorneys. I love financial planners because they know who's holding notes. They know if it's a good idea for someone to get out of a note or if they're looking to get out of a note. Um, I mean, those would be the top of my list. Those are the ones that I would search for. And in your master guide, there are letters that are directed to those types of individuals. Like I have an attorney letter and different things that you can use as a sample letter for your marketing to them.
I want to emphasize something you said earlier, Donna, that person, something that you go over again and again in the materials, that the networking, personal networking is the #1 source. I just want to say that if you guys are just sending out letters and not doing anything else and expecting to get rich, people are just to call you up, it's probably not a winning strategy. You should be doing multiple things. When Donna does her trainings and does webinars, she says, choose 3 of these lead strategies or marketing strategies that you'll commit to.
Yes.
And I'll say this, like Donna had a student recently that she brought up probably, within the past year, brings this up, that he just went on Google and typed note, promissory note, and just started calling every single, whatever whatever the results were, just, hey, I do notes. Hey, I buy notes. Do you know anyone? You know anyone? No? You got to deal with in a week. That he was where it started to work on. It really is a matter of, just like any business, talking to people, networking, etc. All right, so Donna, just go ahead.
Along those lines, thank you for bringing that up, Matthew. I have one fella who has probably brought me about a half a dozen deals, all off of Craigslist, because he didn't want to spend the money on direct mail. And he just set aside a certain amount of time and said 3 times a week or whatever it was that he was going to spend each morning, scraping Craigslist. And that's how he gets his leads, so it does work. I honestly believe that the single biggest thing to do to be successful in the note business is to be persistent. I think that because it's not an exact science, that people tend to give up too quickly. And I think and it's really funny because I can identify the students ahead of time who are going to be successful. And they are the ones who, even in a slump, they go, nope, I'm doing this. If you can do this, I can do this, kind of thing. And I love that. And those that have stuck with it have been buying notes for years. And while others, it's like, okay, I'm just going to try this out. And it's a hit or miss kind of thing. And then they move on to the next thing. And that's their loss for doing that. It really is. Also, another thing that I want to mention is it's not all about flipping notes. Like we're talking about marketing notes, like most people are looking to flip a note for quick cash. That's the reason that most people want to get into notes. But you're really missing the boat if you aren't using notes to build your IRA. There are lots of advanced strategies that you can use. And honestly, I don't know of a quicker way to build an IRA than with some of the advanced strategies. So even if you don't need cash right now, you would certainly be amiss if you did not consider notes for building your retirement.
We do have an IRA question a little bit later. Naomi had emailed one other question about, have you ever used PropStream to find leads? Do you know anything about that?
I am not, I have heard of it. And actually, I do think some students have sent me some things from there, but I don't know enough about it to say, oh, do this, do this. What is the question regarding PropStream?
Just if you could use it to find leads. I'm not familiar with it either.
Okay. The one thing that would come to mind that maybe it might have is expired listings. Expired listings can be a very good source, although I have to tell you that in today's market, I mean, around here, the markets that I've been involved in Florida and different places, they're on fire. And like a lot of houses that are put up for sale, people are paying a premium, 10, 20, $30,000 more than what the asking price. But nonetheless, why don't you look up expired listings? Because if there's something on there, chances are there's something wrong with that property, or there is a real reason why it's not selling, particularly in this market. And so if you contacted those people and said, I noticed that you had your home listed and it did not sell, are you still wanting to sell it? And have you ever considered selling with seller finance? I think that, I don't know if PropStream offers that or not, but that would be my first thought. But honestly, I don't use PropStream, so I can't tell you.
All right, so we had a few follow-up questions in the chat that for the marketing section here. Not sure your name, but saying you're anonymous. Do you recommend using a service to send the letters and postcards, or do you recommend us to print and send them ourselves?
Everybody's different on that. I have a lot of people that use Vistaprint or, shoot, what is the other one? Is it Print Magic? Does that sound right, Matthew? There's lots of different print houses. I have other people that prefer to do it themselves. So that's all just a matter of personal preference. I would say most of my people use something like Vistaprint to send out their mailing.
All right, I'm typing this in the chat, but printingforless.com is a popular one that several of your students use too, so I'll just mention that one too. Okay, let's see. Latonda, I have a list of 1,000 note owners. You mentioned that you shouldn't attempt to buy notes for a home you wouldn't want to own, cardinal rule. So should you review the properties before you send a letter or a postcard to them? Because that's a lot of properties to review.
No. I think that you'd spend all your time doing reviews instead of getting them out there. And when you consider that, the cost of a lead, and it varies depending on how many you buy at a time, but let's say if it's 20 cents a name, I mean, you'd be far better off just to roll the dice with that. If you start going through and looking up each one, you'll get so bogged down, you'll never buy a note. I would not recommend that at all.
All right, let's see. JD asked, I targeted loan balances of at least 150,000 in Florida and Texas and didn't get any responses from my mailing. Should I continue with the second mailing or get a new list with lower loan balances? Well, 150 minimum, that's on the high end of what you recommend, right, Donna?
It is. If I were you, I would lower your minimum to 75,000. Why don't you also send me a copy of your card or letter so I can see what you're sending out? A lot of times it is an issue with the actual mailing. It's funny how I can tell people exactly what to do, and their idea of doing what I do is not necessarily the same thing. I will never forget this. There was a woman in Florida who was sending out letters, and this was for non-performing notes, but it was a great example. And she sent me an email and she said, Donna, I used your program and I haven't gotten any responses. And I had like 10 things that would increase your response rate. And for non-performing notes, it was like use a colored envelope and use a unique company name, and make sure to use the commemorative stamp and don't use labels. And so I start asking her, I called her up and I said, did you use a colored envelope? Well, no, because we'd already printed out these company letters. I have stationery and we're using those. And I said, okay, do you have a unique company name? Well, no, we already had it printed on, this is what we have for the return address. So, and then did you use an unusual size envelope? No, it's the standard business envelope. And did you use a commemorative stamp? Oh no, we had this system set up. And it was like, I don't think you used my program. So do make sure that your letter and your postcard look like what I have as an example, and go from there. But so reiterate that question again, please, if you don't mind rereading it.
I targeted loan balances of at least 150,000 in Florida and Texas and haven't gotten interest in the first mailing. Should I continue with the second mailing or should I get a new list with lower balances?
Well, I think I would like to have seen you use lower balances because there are more. It gives you a broader range. But here's the way I look at that. Even if even if you have a smaller number that you sent to, those are viable people that could want to sell their note. So it's as good of a lead as one for 75,000. Okay. So I would probably tend to think that it is either the letter or the postcard that you're sending to. And that's what I would look at first before I would just go off and buy another list. But I would send that out again and again. And like I said, 3 times is the magic number. Why don't you just take, instead of sending 1,000 out, why don't you take 200 of them and maybe change up your letter or your postcard, whatever you sent the last time, send the opposite to like 200 of those people, and then send out again to those same 200 and see if that doesn't increase it. But definitely send me a copy of your postcard and your letter so I can take a look at it as well. And then if you're still not getting any, then I would definitely buy a new list.
Does it matter where the regions of each state that they choose to do, or is that just up to them to pick? Is there any right or wrong way to do that?
Not necessarily. You want to avoid any like war zones or anything like that. I wouldn't market in bad areas, but generally speaking, the region of a state does not matter.
All right, last follow-up. Tamara wanted to know if her Easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching ends before the summer, how will she complete the program? So,
You mean if you don't get a deal by the end of the summer? I guess that's what.
yeah.
Well, you can renew it. Oh, Matthew, help me here. What do we have available for renewals?
If you get a deal after your coaching expires, just reach out to us and we'll make something.
Oh, I didn't understand that's what she was asking. Yes. Definitely. I mean, if you get a deal and your coaching has expired, still send us a letter or an email and let us know. I thought you were wanting to extend the coaching. That's what I thought. And we do have specials on that from time to time. I don't know, Matthew, is that on the website now? I don't know if that's something that's always available or not.
Yeah, it's always available. It's on the website and we can work something out too.
Cool.
All right, I think that's it for the marketing stuff. Let's go a little deep now, Donna. What do you think?
All right, not too hard.
All right, so we got some deal mechanics questions here, some really good ones. We'll start out with from Deep Ali. When a note is created, does the title get transferred or deeded to the borrower immediately, or does the transfer happen when the note is fully paid off?
Okay. Well, that's kind of a trick question. For a note in mortgage or a note in a deed of trust, when that closes, when the note is originated, it's not, when the note is originated, yes, the title would transfer to the new owner. There would be usually it's a warranty deed that would go from the buyer, from the seller to the buyer. And then there would be a mortgage or a deed of trust, which is a lien against that property that would be filed. So that's if it is a note or a deed of trust or a mortgage. What you're thinking of, I believe, when you ask about does the transfer happen when the note is fully paid off, that would be a land contract. Okay, on land contracts, sometimes called real estate contracts or contract for deeds, what that means is we have a contract that I'm going to pay you so much money over a certain period of time, and when I'm done, then I get the deed to the property. So on a land contract or contract for deed, the actual title to the property transfers after they're done paying. But with a mortgage or deed of trust, it transfers at the very beginning.
Interesting. I thought the answer to that was going to be a lot simpler than that. I didn't know either.
I misunderstood the question at first, and then I realized because what I was going to tell you was that the note, first of all, the note does not get recorded. It is the mortgage or deed of trust that gets recorded. And that happens at the time that the note is created.
Okay. Let's see here. Next, Bob has a question. What are the closing costs for flipping notes? Do I build in my fee? And what is the typical amount? Is it approximately 2% of the note dollar amount? So what are the closing costs like, Donna?
Okay, closing costs vary, mainly depending on whether or not there is existing title insurance. If there is a lender's title policy, not an owner's, that's not going to help you. If there is an existing lender's title policy and you are buying that note, and even if you're flipping it to somebody else, then whoever owns that note, any holder in due course, which means it's assigned to you, any person, any assignee of that note is also insured by that same policy. So I love it when someone has an existing lender's policy, because that means I don't have to go buy a new one. And the thing about the lender's policy is that you pay so much per thousand. So if it's a small note, and let's say and it varies, it might be around $4 per thousand. So on a $50,000 property, the policy would cost $200. But if it is a $500,000 property, now we're talking a whole lot more money. So what I usually do is I usually figure in about $1,200 for my closing costs, and that does include about $300 for a drive-by appraisal. However, if there is no existing lender's title policy, then I'll probably bump that up to $1,500. And if it's a larger note, I'd probably bump it up to $2,000 for closing costs. So, but generally speaking, most of the notes that I'm doing is going to be $1,200 is what I rough in as my estimate on costs. Now, do I build in my fee? Well, obviously, if you are on the Easiest 1, 2, 3 coaching program, I build in a fee for us, and we split that 50-50. So you're going to have that. When I send you the quote, I send you all the calculations, the numbers. I show you exactly what I'm estimating our closing cost to be, what I estimate our net profit would be that we would split. But assuming that you're, according to your question, that you're just doing this on your own, if you are flipping the note, it's buy low and sell high. So your profit is going to be the difference in the prices. Okay, so that's the easiest way to do it. If you're signing the contract, then your assignment fee would be your profit. As far as what is the typical amount, when you get into the larger notes, then sometimes people use a percentage, like if you're talking about a $1 million note or something, but that's not commonly what we deal with seller carrybacks. So I will say that the larger the note, typically the larger the profit. What I kind of do is I talk to the note seller and I try to get a feel for whether or not they're shopping the note around. And if they're shopping the note around, I'm going to give them my very, very best quote. And then it becomes, how much is my time worth? And I like to make at least $3,000 for my time in flipping a note. So that means we need to build in a $6,000 fee so that we can split it. I sometimes will go down less, but I like to try to get at least 6,000. Usually I'm building in between $6,000 and $14,000 profit on a note. The other thing that I have found is, keep in mind, for most of my students, they just want to close something, so they would rather make less and just get a deal done. If if I were doing that deal by myself, I might build in a larger profit. One of the things that I used to do was, if I was really desperate for cash, I would take less of a profit to close the deal. But if I had multiple deals in the pipeline, then I would build in a larger profit, because if I didn't get it, I wasn't worried about it. So that's another way that you could do that.
Cool. Bob actually had a good follow-up question on the Deep Lease question there about the title transfer or whatever. He said, if we're buying a contract for deed, don't we need the title transferred to us until the home buyer has completed paying off the loan? If not, how are we protected if they default?
Okay, repeat that again, please.
So if we're buying a contract for deed, don't we need the title transferred to us until the buyer has paid off the loan? If not, how are we protected if the buyer defaults?
Absolutely. What the way I understood that question was, when does it get transferred to the borrower? But you are absolutely right. The way that you purchase a land contract is that you actually have the note seller transfer the deed to the property to you. So you become the owner of the property, and then you have them assign the contract for deed to you. So you're actually buying the property subject to the land contract. And I'm sorry if that's what DePauli meant. I thought he was talking about, when does it get transferred to the buyer. But thank you for pointing that out. That is absolutely right.
All right, moving on. David. So David said he's working with an FHA approved lender about a note that's in the foreclosure phase. And they said they'll allow him to assume the note, but not buy the note until the foreclosure phase is over. He wants to know, if I buy a note from a lender during the foreclosure phase, would I be a holder in due course, or would this be a defective note where I would not have the highest protection?
Okay, I do remember reading that. Can you pull that up on the screen for me,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I can see where that is? Okay, got it. Okay. Um, So the first point is, he says, so he's dealing with an FHA lender about a note that is in foreclosure. And they said that they would allow him to assume the note, but not buy the note until the foreclosure phase is over. Okay, that should be a major red flag to somebody. Does anybody see the difference between assuming the note and buying the note? Assuming the note means that he's going to be responsible for making the payments. Buying the note means that you are entitled to receive the payments. Okay, so you don't want to assume. I mean, it'd be really weird for you to want to assume a note. There'd have to be some, I don't know why you would want to do that. So you're not interested in assuming the loan. So he is saying that you can't buy the note until the foreclosure phase is over. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem is, after the foreclosure, there's no note. The foreclosure wipes out the note, and the lender gets the deed to the property. So after the foreclosure, what you have is an REO, real estate owned by the bank, and then they could sell the property to you. So I'm kind of thinking that whoever you're talking to doesn't understand what you're wanting to do. That's the way I would read that. If I buy a note from a lender during the foreclosure phase, would it be a holder in due course, or would it be a defective note where I would not have the highest protection? Um, if you buy the note from the current note holder, then you are a holder in due course, but it's whether or not it's a defective note has nothing to do with whether it's in foreclosure or not. It is a defaulted note, okay? So as long as the note was properly written and there's nothing wrong with it, it wasn't usurious, meaning that the interest rate was higher than what is legally allowed by law, or as long as there weren't some crazy provisions in the note, or as long as there was not a title issue that would stop you from having where maybe you didn't really have the first lien position. Those kind of defects could affect whether or not you can collect on the note if you buy it, but it has nothing to do with whether or not the note is in default. That's a totally separate issue. And shoot, I can't even tell you how many notes I bought that were already in default that I bought from a bank. And then I would either what I primarily did was I would modify the note and keep the people in the property. That was always my preferred method for doing non-performing notes. But certainly you could also continue in the foreclosure and foreclose and take the house, or you can negotiate and get a deed in lieu of foreclosure and get the house.
So does this one sound like a good use of his time?
Well, I don't have enough information to determine that. I would need to know, I would need to know a lot more about it. Would want to look at the note itself. I would want to know where the property is located, how much equity is in it. And not that it has to have a lot of equity. Well, it depends also on what your game plan is. If you're planning on keeping the person, the homeowner in the property or not. So I really would need a lot more information. And there is an application, not an application, but a submission form for buying non-performing notes. And that is in the 2019 media set. And so I would gather that information. I would also want to know if the borrower has filed bankruptcy. Normally that's not a problem. It delays your process maybe by a couple months, but it doesn't keep you from foreclosing. Usually you get a relief of stay, which allows you to go ahead and foreclose because you're a secured creditor.
Cool, that's helpful. Let's move on to Anna's questions here. Let's see. So Anna asks, if I create a note with owner financing, what are some important items I should make sure are in the note?
Okay. If I were you, I would go through the green book, the smart seller financing book, because the most important thing is that you have a solid note. It's I promise to pay you this much money or this much interest on the unpaid balance. It's important to have your basic note structure and just the basic provisions of a note, because a lot of times I've had to pass on notes because they just were thrown together and didn't have the proper clauses in them. But I don't think that's what she's asking here. I would make sure that there is a late charge and a charge for return checks. I would try to keep the interest rate as high as you can and still strike a deal with the buyer, keeping in mind that the higher the interest rate is on the note, the less of a discount you have to take. And so you've got to find that balance. I mean, shoot, we can discount a 0 interest loan and still buy it, but then the note seller is going to take a huge hit. And a lot of times they're not prepared for that. So I know interest rates are extremely low with the bank, but keeping in mind that if a person is wanting a seller finance loan, that means they probably can't get a bank loan for whatever reason. And so usually they're willing to pay more, considerably more than a bank loan. In today's market, I would try to get at least 6 or 7% interest. In Texas, people are writing notes for 10% even now. So it kind of depends on your market, but the higher the interest rate that you can get, the better. Also, if you are able to put a balloon on it, a balloon will always make your note more valuable. But if you recall from the stimulus training and the Dodd-Frank issue, the only time that you can put a balloon on a note where the borrower is going to live in the property, so it's a consumer loan that falls under Dodd-Frank, would be if you qualify for the one-time exclusion. So what that means is that I'm assuming that Anna is creating notes and didn't necessarily live in the property. If she qualifies for the one-time exclusion, then she could put a balloon on that note. Keep in mind that the one-time exclusion is primarily for individuals. So it would be an individual, a trust, or an estate. So Anna, if you're using an LLC, that's going to disqualify you from putting a balloon on it. Okay. Or if you do more than one note within 12 months of doing that note, it would disqualify you from using the one-time exclusion. Now, there's another real easy way to get around that the Dodd-Frank altogether, and that is to sell it to someone as a rental property, because all commercial notes are outside of Dodd-Frank. So if you can do that, that's even better. Okay. If you cannot put a balloon note on it, the shorter the term that you can make it. So instead of amortizing it over 360 months, if you can amortize it over 20 years or 15 years, you will take less of a discount. Okay. But I really suggest that you go to the Green Smart Seller Financing book, because there's a checklist in there you can go through and make sure that you have dotted I's and crossed T's. You need to have a default provision so that the interest goes up if the people go into default. I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, that's good. So her follow-up to that is, if I sold a rental with owner financing to create a new homeowner, what are some ways I could increase my yield but still keep it a win-win for both sides? What would be a reasonable yield in today's market?
Well, I think I just covered that. Ways that you can increase your yield would be to have a higher, as high of an interest rate as it will work for the buyer, have a shorter term. If the homeowner is the buyer, then you're probably not going to be able to put a balloon on it unless you qualify for the one-time exclusion. A reasonable yield really varies a lot. It's going to depend upon the borrower's credit. It's going to depend on how much money they put down. The more money that they can put down, then the more valuable that note is. I always hate to throw out numbers like this because there is such a variance, and I don't want you to apply what I say. And I can tell you 8%, but that note might be so good that maybe a reasonable yield is 7%, or there might be issues with it where, it might need to be even higher. So the best way to determine what yield is to submit it to a note buyer and see what they will pay. Okay, I hope that is helpful to you.
Cool. All right, so Tamara also had several questions. Let's start with this one. Since it's unusual for private note holders to escrow for taxes and housing insurance, how will you be alerted if the payer stops paying those or doesn't pay them?
Well, actually, more and more people are now escrowing for taxes and insurance. It's becoming more and more popular. But
Hey,
if,
Don, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It looks like the battery's about to die. Can you make sure that your laptop's plugged in? You're answering the question about how do you know, or how are you alerted if a payor doesn't pay
oh,
the
oh, oh, oh,
taxes and
okay.
insurance?
Okay, so I think it's a good idea that if they are paying directly, that you have them send you a copy of the receipt to show that it's been paid. I also make a tickler for insurance. Normally, when you're added onto the hazard insurance, they will send you a notice of cancellation automatically, but I think it's always good, excuse me, to have a tickler that if, when the anniversary date hits, that like 30 days prior to that, you, well, it wouldn't be that much, but I would contact them, the insurance company, before the insurance expires and make sure that it's paid. They have a grace period afterwards, so you can usually get it reinstated afterwards, but just have them give you proof of payment. Now on the taxes, you can go on the auditor's website to confirm that, but you would have to have the insurance information to check that yourself.
Joe was asking, do you need a special kind of escrow account or do you need a servicer for that or?
Well, more and more people are using servicers, and it does make things much, much easier. Um, and a servicer obviously would handle the escrow. I absolutely positively will not escrow for taxes and insurance and do it without a servicer. If the note calls for the escrow of taxes and insurance, by all means, use a servicer.
Okay. Let's see here. All right, next question from Tamara. If it's Tamara or Tamara, I'm sorry. I think I'm alternating between them. I'm sorry for getting your name wrong. Okay, so in the master guide for the post-closing follow-up, you say closing agent will be expected to prepare the disbursement checks not present at closing, such as appraiser, attorney, etc. Does that mean that you shouldn't pay the appraiser and attorney until closing?
Well, normally the attorney, assuming that it is attorney from the title company, that is paid out of the closing. The appraiser nowadays, they want you to pay up front. So no, the appraiser gets paid up front, but everything else is normally paid out of the closing.
Okay. All right, another one. So in the chapter 2 of the master guide, the Bill Buyer example that you give, he refinances with the bank after 10 years. How does that allow him to pay the final balloon payment? Wouldn't he be getting a traditional mortgage, not a cash out payment? Would he somehow have to take the equity out of the house and pay the balloon? And wouldn't the bank be upset with being in a second position since Sam Seller is still waiting for the balloon payment?
This is not a good question. It's not a good question to be on here because it this is just not the way it works at all. There's so many things wrong with this on so many different levels. So let's see here. Bill Buyer is going to refinance with the bank after 10 years. How does that allow him to pay the final balloon payment? Well, if he refinances, that means that he is going to pay off the entire note, which would include the balloon payment. I mean, most likely, oh, in Bill Buyer, it was actually, that was written for as a 10-year note with a balloon. It was not amortized longer than that. So if he refinances, he would refinance at 10 years. If he waits until after 10 years, the note would be in default. So he's going to refinance and pay the entire note, including the balloon, pay that off, whatever the unpaid balance is, prior to the 10-year balloon. Wouldn't he be getting a traditional mortgage, not a cash out payment? Yes, it would be a refinance mortgage. So again, the balloon is already paid off, so it doesn't have to be any cash out. It's paying off the existing mortgage that is on there, which actually is one of the reasons to do a seller carryback, because banks, when they may not lend you money as a new borrower, but if you are refinancing an existing mortgage that you've always paid on time, they're much more likely to make the loan to you. Would he somehow take the equity out of the house to pay the balloon payment? No, it's been paid off with the refinance. There is no second position loan because that balloon payment would be paid off. I think it was just a complete misunderstanding on how the balloon works.
So Bill Buyer doesn't need to come up with his own funds to pay the balloon before he can refinance it. The refinancing solves all of that, the balloon and everything else.
The refinancing does, yes, the refinancing does pay off the balloon.
All right. What do you mean when you say proven exchange value?
Someone says, I'll give you this car for a down payment. Well, what is the blue book value of the car? And that would be a proven exchange value versus sweat equity, which how do you prove? Well, I, totally remodeled the kitchen and I did completely re-landscape the yard and I did all this work on the house. That is not a proven exchange value. It's hard to put a price on that.
Okay. And also, what do you mean when you say a jacket cover for commitment?
So generally speaking, it used to be that title companies would only send the guts of the policy, and that is the computer printout, Schedule A, B, C, and D, and that has all of the precise information regarding your deal. But now they've gotten so where they usually will send the jacket. The jacket usually is 4 pages. It's like one big long page that you fold it in half and it makes like a cover front and back, and it's printed on all 4 sides. And that includes all the fine print that goes with the policy and all, so it really, it's the fine print. I don't know a better way to say that. And so you want to make sure that you have that fine print. Otherwise, the commitment is not valid if they don't send you the entire thing. Also, it has to have been signed. Don't let them send, and there's a signature on the inside and a signature on the cover. And there has to be, those signatures have to be in place when they send them to you, or that is not a valid commitment.
Okay. And then Tamara's last question, what do you do if your investor calls you about a late payment from the payer?
Well, the investor shouldn't be calling me when the payor is late, but because they're my student, I'd probably give them advice of what to do. But generally speaking, when you sell to an investor, that's on them to take care of the note from that point on. But if one of my investors called up and said somebody was late, I would recommend that they send them a late notice and collect a late fee. If they're continuously late and it's going to be a problem and go into foreclosure, I would recommend that they sit down with the borrower and try to work out some type of a negotiation for a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And the thing is that you want to nip that in the bud before it gets too far behind. On notes, time is money, and the longer that they're in default and you don't do anything about it, the more that's going to hurt you. You need to act quickly if somebody goes into default.
Okay. All right. Hilda sent some questions about partials. Let's jump into those. So you've mentioned before to hold off on doing partials for a while because you said that some states are restricting partials unless you're a licensed broker. Is that right, Donna?
Well, I don't know if I said hold off. There are like a lot of people that have been doing partials nonstop for many years, including myself. But the fact is that there are some states that are, they're not as apt to, they're much stricter about the partials, and they want you to have a license to do it. Ohio is one of them. I would not use, well, my partial purchase agreement is very specific about in Ohio, they do not want two people to hold the note at the same time. And my note purchase agreement is very specific that they don't. And you buy the entire note, and then after you collect so many payments, then you assign the rest back to them. But that could be construed, I disagree with it, but it could be construed as two people owning the note at the same time. And that's the issue. Remember how I say don't pool money? Well, in some states, it could be construed as pooling money. Now, that being said, I need to tell you this. So I have, over the years, had a really, really good securities attorney. He's now retired. But when I would, and he went over my partial purchase agreement. And multiple times I've said, look, people are saying a note is a security. And he says, Donna, which way do you want me to argue it? Because he has won cases based on that a note is a security, and he's won cases based on it's not. And there are exceptions. What you have to do is you have to go specifically to the state law and read what it says. And generally speaking, there's an exception of some kind for seller carrybacks. And you are allowed to sell a property and carry back a note. And for years, seller carrybacks are not governed by the same laws as bank mortgages. And people want to throw them all in the same basket, and that's simply not true. That's why Dodd-Frank has the allowances for the one-time exclusion, because that's typically your mom and pop that owned a property and carried back a mortgage. So like all of the institutions, they continue to do partials in all states. I was just, I guess, saying that if you want to be very, very cautious, then maybe you want to just stick to whole purchases. I am not afraid of doing partials. However, I have come up with a new plan. I don't know if you were at my academy last year, but I introduced a totally new strategy. It's an advanced strategy. It's not for everyone, but it was addressing this specific thing. And it's a way of using options to buy the note. You buy the entire note, and you give the note seller an option to buy back part of it. And if you look at the documentation, it is so clear that at no time do the two parties own the note at the same time. And what I like about it even more, besides the documentation, and like I had multiple attorneys look at this, and it took me many, many, many hours to do, and I've used it multiple times, and all the attorneys involved have approved the deal, but the documents. But what I particularly like about it is it is very clear that the note seller holds an option to buy back part of the note. And if they don't buy it back, then they don't own it, because they've sold the entire note. And so it's very clearly defining the roles that the parties are playing. I mean, an option is used all the time. And so people know what an option is versus just a general agreement that says, this is what we're doing. So the option is an advanced strategy. It's not for everyone. It's a little bit more sophisticated to understand. But in my opinion, I believe that would be more protective. All of that being said, I need to say I am not an attorney, okay? And I would recommend, if you're going to do partials, that you find your own attorney and get their blessing on using the document, because it does vary from state to state. And even though, I told you how my attorney said, which way do you want to go? I can prove it either way. Tell me which way you want to take it. I think the important thing is that if you're going to do the partials, you need to have legal counsel that will back what you're doing. And if you don't have that, then you should not do a partial. I think that's the simplest way to say it. Okay. I don't know if that helped or not. I know. Matthew, do we still have a way for people to buy the 2020 Academy media set?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure do. That has the option agreement, training, and a bunch of other stuff in it.
Can you make it live?
Yeah, sure.
Can you do that while we're on the call?
Sure. Yeah, I can pull it up. Here, let me.
I mean, you don't have to put it on the screen, but I'm saying, can you get that together and we'll come back to that? Because here, I've got about 15, 16, something like that. I've got some of those hard copies of that media set left. Matthew, can you make up like a $500 off coupon for it or something like that while we're talking, while we finish up here?
Sure.
Okay, so if any of you are interested in that set, if you want to do the options, that's the only place where I have actually made that available. It was something I just did at the last Academy. And if that's something you're interested in, you might want to pick up the 2020 media set. That was a totally different Academy. People ask, the difference between the latest one. Why do I always put the 2019 with my Note Buyer's Master Guide system? That is because 2019 was an A to Z type of academy where I taught everything. I tried to make it as comprehensive as possible. And so that's the last complete training on notes that I have done. So you definitely want that. But the 2020 was very different in that I've never done an academy like that. And I took, I believe it was 5 deals, and they were real deals, but I changed the addresses and stuff just for privacy purposes. And I walk you totally through the entire evaluation, all of the calculations and everything on them. So if it's a great thing if you're just starting out with notes, that's an awesome teaching for beginners. And then I also included in a full documentation package for one of my deals. So if you're wanting to learn documents, all of that is in there. And then of course the option section. And it's a very thorough teaching on the option and using options for partials. There's also some advanced teachings on private lending and combining private lending and options. And that's a great, great way. That's what I'm using in my IRA right now. I put like $40,000 in my IRA last summer using those advanced strategies. But I taught all of that in the 2020 Academy. So Matthew, what is the price of the Academy?
Well, normally it's $14.97 if they already have your master guide system, but I guess with the 500 off, it'd be $9.97 tonight.
Okay, so I'll offer that tonight. I'm sorry for the impromptu thing, but I can see that some of you would want to have that. So that's an awesome deal. This will be a flash sale. So if you're interested in that for $9.97, you would get the audio, the video. That's 4 days of teaching plus the hard copy, and that includes all the option, the explanation of it, and a very thorough walkthrough of how it all works, including the documents. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Just let me know. I'm getting that together. We can bring that up in a little bit. Let me know if you want to do that.
Show me where you are, and I'll just keep going on the questions while you're doing that.
Okay.
Okay. Are there still enough deals out there if we don't do partials? Absolutely. I got to tell you that, like, at least I would say 80% of my deals are full purchases. I mean, partials are nice and everything, but It just works out that I'm doing way, way more full purchases than partials. Partials are especially nice when you have a property that doesn't have a lot of equity in it. To me, that's the real benefit of doing a partial, because it allows you to control how much equity is in the deal, protecting the part that you're buying. So that's the main reason that I would do a partial, is if there's little equity in that property. In Illinois, where we live, lawyers are heavily used in real estate transactions. Some don't seem to have much knowledge about buying and selling notes. How would you recommend that we find a good lawyer to help us? That is hard to find. I mean, when you find one, they're like gold, because most attorneys, while they understand the documents and they understand the legalities of it, but they don't have the street knowledge. They don't understand the structure and how to flip a note and make money off of it. They know how to create a note. They know what needs to go into the note and the mortgage and the deed of trust. They understand the foreclosure process and all of that, but they don't necessarily understand how we make money buying existing seller carrybacks. I would look, I'll tell you what I would do. In Illinois, I don't know if you're a member of Jane Garvey's group, Creative Investors. If you don't know Jane Garvey, you need to meet her. She and her husband were at the Cincinnati RIA group at the very first meeting that I ever went to 30 years ago. Her husband has since passed, not too long after I met him, actually. And Jane has really carried on, and she runs a group in Chicago. It's phenomenal. She is real. She is very, very proactive with, in lobbying and everything in Illinois. That is definitely the group to belong to if you are in the Chicago area. And I would highly recommend that you search her out. If you can't find it, email info@thenotebuyer.com and I will connect you. I just can't remember. It's creative something and I don't remember exactly. I would have to look it up. I would also comment that I don't buy notes in Illinois anymore. And the reason is their laws are super, super strict. And they're like the one state that I would not buy in because they require a license. And I don't think there's any way around that. I mean, I don't know. Some states are just more friendly than others, and I personally would not be flipping notes in Illinois. That's my personal opinion. But again, I'm not an attorney. The big thing is you want to find an attorney who will back up what you do, and that if he says yes, use these documents and structure it this way, and you'll be fine. As long as he's willing to back you up on that, then go for it. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, if I lived in Illinois, I'd be buying in other states. And that's one of the beauties of doing notes. You don't have to buy where you live. You can buy all over the country. So that's just my personal opinion. What questions should we ask a lawyer to determine if he or she would be good in this business? I would find out what their specialty is. Do they handle, are they real estate attorneys? Do they handle foreclosures? If they handle foreclosures, then they understand having the real estate as security, even though you're doing a performing note. I would find out if they originate loans or if they handle the paperwork and transactions for people who are originating private loans. I would ask them if they can handle a simultaneous closing where you're buying a note and selling it to somebody else. It's one of those things where if you start asking them those questions, you'll get a feel for how much experience they have.
Hey, I'm ready. I'm back if you want me to take over the questions, Donna.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. So do they need a lawyer in each state they're working in, or? I think that's where you left
No,
off.
no,
Okay.
yes, that is. No, you do not. There are some states where you have to use a lawyer to close. You're either going to use a lawyer or a title company, okay? Georgia requires a lawyer. New Jersey requires a lawyer. Um, those are the two main ones. I'm sure there are others. But what will happen is that when we decide where we're going to close, we always look at the settlement statement from when the property originally sold. And normally I go to whoever closed the original transaction. And so you would be made aware right by that if they went to an attorney to close or did they use a title company. I mean, I wanted an attorney to draw up an assignment for a deed of trust in Texas. So I used the attorney at the title company. So no, the key is you don't need to go out and find attorneys in every state. Absolutely not. If you, when you get a note, use the settlement statement, go to the attorney or title company that's on the settlement statement and work from there. That's how I would do that. That being said, I do need to clarify. I would not, absolutely not go to them and say, hey, can you show me how we can structure this so it's legal? So here's the deal. If you structure your notes as the way I teach you with a simultaneous close or an assignment of contract, you are by nature, by definition, if you will, I mean, you are a principal in the transaction. If you do a simultaneous close, you are buying the note, and even though you may only be on title for 30 seconds, that note is going to go into your name. And then there is another assignment that goes from you to your end buyer. You do not need a license to do that. Okay, you don't need one because certainly you have the right to buy a note and you have the right to sell a note. Okay, so that is one of the clearest ways that you can ensure that you're not acting as a broker. The other way to do it is by assigning a contract. When you get a note under contract to buy it, that's an asset that you own. That is a right that you own, and you can sell that right to someone else for money. And so you had just sold an asset that you own. You did not broker the deal, even though it went directly from the note seller to your end buyer. You didn't just stick them together. You sold your contract to the end buyer. And many of you have done that with properties. So you don't need to be a broker to do that. And that's why I'm so adamant to make sure that you set up your transactions the way I teach you. Because if you do, you're acting as a principal in the transaction and you're not acting as a broker. If you are brokering a transaction, let's say Sam Seller says, hey, I want to sell my note. And you were talking to Irene Investor at a local RIA meeting. And she says, oh, I would love to buy a note. And you say, hey, if you'll give me 25,000, I'll hook you up with somebody who wants to sell their note. That is brokering. And you absolutely need a license to do that. So follow the way that I teach you and you should be fine.
Do you know what other states require a license for partials?
No, I don't. I've only, I don't.
Okay.
What I really want to stress, if you are doing partials, I believe that you need to get legal counsel in the state that you're at and make sure that they will back you if there's an issue. And the truth is that if you go to one and they say no, I'd go to a different one because another attorney would go, everybody knows seller carrybacks are not considered, a security in this case because of blah, blah, blah. And that's the attorney that you're looking for. I hope I didn't scare you guys away. I've been doing this for 30 years and have not had a problem with it. I tend to be extremely cautious, especially for you guys, and I'm just trying to be upfront and tell you what you need to be aware of. Generally speaking, though, if you're doing full purchases, flipping notes using a seller, a simultaneous close or an assignment of contract, that's solid.
I've got that coupon code and stuff ready. Do you want to show that to them?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
I'll let you go ahead and announce that because I don't know what you put together there.
All right, so I'm going to share this here. So if you guys go to notebuyerzacademy.com, that has the latest academy that Donna did, which is the world tour here. And you'll find just some information on it about what she covered and what's included. But basically, if you scroll down here or click register now, you'll see the overview of the offer. And these are the two options that you have. If you already have the master guide system, you can get just the 2020 world tour by itself with all of there's a ton of video and audio and PDFs of the manuals that we were going over and the deal documentation. If you don't have the master guide system yet, you can get a special offer on that. Donna's including it here. Normally it's $24.97, but she's including it with the 2020 set for a reduced price, I think $9.97. But these are the normal prices. The coupon code is PROSPER, PROSPER. Put that in. If you come down here, just pick what you want. If you already have the home study course, click add. You'll see this coupon entry section here. Just put PROSPER in there. Whichever one you choose, it'll apply it right there. Just fill out your details, click place order, and then you'll get an email confirmation and access to everything else. So I'll put those details in the chat as well. If you don't have the master guide system already, you're not going to get it cheaper than this. I mean, usually even at events and things, when Donna's given a really steep discount on it, it's never just $9.97. So that's what it more or less is here. So take a look at that. Let me know if you have any questions. There's quite a bit of information on here about what all is included and what Donna taught. It's pretty cool. I think you guys will like it. So
okay, and this is just a flash offer here for those who want to do this right now. And so it's $9.97. If you're already my student, it's $9.97 to get the 2020 media set. Okay, and if you're wanting to do the options or you want additional teaching on evaluating notes, that's a great buy. Okay, let's just leave it at that. Okay.
sure.
So I'll leave that offer open for 24 hours. Okay.
Cool. And if you have questions about it, or if you're running any issues, just shoot us an email, or I'm happy to take an order over the phone as well tomorrow, or if you have a question. Before I wrap up this, oh, I forgot to mention, if you already have, if you've already got this, if you've already paid for the media set 2020 recently, since Donna's giving a special with the 500 off, usually what we'll do is we'll extend your coaching by 3 months to make up for that, so you don't feel like you missed out.
Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you for doing that.
Well, actually, is that okay with you, Donna?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's a good idea.
All right, so back to the questions. Let's see. Or is there any questions about well, if there are, we'll answer them later. I want to get through these. Donna, there was a question that came up. Are you, based on this partial stuff, are you familiar with hypothecation?
Yes.
There's a fella, Anthony, has a question. He buys and he flips mobile homes with owner financing, and had somebody reach out to him wanting to take half the payments for half the term. How is that different? He was asking, how's that different than a partial? He's not sure what to do with that.
I would run from that. I would never split payments. You never want to split a monthly payment because what happens is, what if one party decides they want to foreclose, the other one doesn't? That is like a major can of worms. I would not get involved with that. And hypothecation just means putting the notes up as collateral for a loan. I would run from that based on the splitting of the payments.
Okay, let's see. No, we're getting late here. Go ahead, Tom.
Somebody asked about Maryland deals. I haven't, um, the main reason that I don't buy in Maryland is for the non-performing notes. And if you remember, it's probably been 20 years ago now, when they had the foreclosure specialist. Maryland was the first state that introduced that. And you had to be a licensed foreclosure specialist to buy non-performing notes in Maryland. And that's the primary reason that I don't buy in Maryland. I have looked at Maryland notes recently, and I don't have a problem buying performing notes there. It's just not one of my favorite places. So if you go to the stimulus training, I list in there my least favorite states to buy in. Now, this does not mean that you shouldn't buy there. I'm just saying for me and where I have investors, for example, I don't like California. Now, that being said, last year I bought a California note because it was a great note and I wanted to buy it. But generally speaking, California has its own set of rules, and you deal with properties differently there. And if you're not in the California market, then it can be cumbersome because it's so different. It's like their own world out there. But if you are in California and you know the California real estate market, then by all means, I would consider buying notes in California. Okay. The notes that I am not, the states that I'm not wild about buying in are California, Washington, Oregon, Illinois, New York, Maryland. Those are all I can think of off the top of my head. New York is very strict on their laws. So and see, all of that being said, I have bought notes. I bought a note in New York not too long ago. I hold a note in Oregon. I bought multiple notes in Oregon. A big thing is that I would avoid the large cities where there's lots of trouble. I would not want to hold a note in those areas. It's just that some states are friendlier for real estate investors in general, not just note holders, okay? And so that's what I'm looking at. There are a lot of people that won't hold notes in Ohio, and I'll buy all the Ohio notes I can get. And they won't buy because they think that that Ohio was slow to recover from the last downturn. Whereas I don't think that at all. And they're afraid because it's a mortgage state that it might take longer to foreclose on. Well, I'm accustomed to it taking 6 months to a year to foreclose. And I'm not buying non-performing notes, but I'm saying that when I was buying, that was the norm. So it just depends on where you're comfortable with, and wherever you're dealing. If you're dealing with like the non-performing notes, then I recommend that you get with the RIA groups in that area and that you familiarize yourself with the local laws. Like the foreclosure auctions vary from county to county. So that could make a difference for you. But overall, what I would tell you is that as long as you are flipping entire notes and you use the simultaneous close or the assignment of contract to flip seller carryback notes, that is a solid deal, and you're acting as a principal, and it is a great, great, easy way to make quick cash. I don't know of an easier way. I'm concerned because we got into a lot of legalities here that rarely ever come into play, but I do believe that questions need to be answered, and I believe that I should be open and upfront and tell you what I know about it. And so we went kind of into the weeds on some of this stuff, but I hope that your takeaway is that if you are flipping the seller carryback notes and you use the procedures that I gave you, it is an awesome way to make quick cash. And it's if you are looking to build up your self-directed IRA, the more sophisticated techniques, I mean, like I said, I put $40,000 in my IRA last year. And it was by doing creative deals inside my self-directed IRA. And so those are some of the things that I think could help you to build wealth very, very quickly. Okay. Any questions?
All right, that's actually a pretty good seg into Carla's question here. So we got 8 questions left. Is everyone good to keep going? Donna, you want to keep going?
Yeah.
All right. So Carla asked, how much money you need to get started doing this? You just said nothing. Do you want to, she says she doesn't have a lot of money and doesn't want to spend what little bit she's had saved up. So can she do this without any of her own cash or credit or anything?
And she's also asking about doing this in northeastern Ohio, which is economically depressed, and I'm very familiar with it. I used to own a title company up in Cleveland on Rockside Road, and I have bought a lot of notes in northeastern Ohio. The thing is that things are you use different strategies and different ways of evaluating your notes, even if it's a depressed market. So I would not let that stop me, but you definitely do need to, like, if you don't want to misrepresent the value of the note if it's depressed, or excuse me, the value of the property. If it's a depressed area, then obviously that you have to use today's value when you're calculating the equity in that property. But personally, I would go to some of the hotter areas. Since you can invest anywhere in the country, why would you focus right there just because it's your backyard? It's just as easy to mail a letter to Texas or Florida or Georgia or the Carolinas or Tennessee, any number of other places that you could probably do a whole lot better on. Okay. That's the beauty of doing notes. It's not like where you're buying a property and you want to go kick the bricks. That's just not necessary. Let's see, there was something else having to do. Oh, how much money you have. So to get started, you're going to need to have your, if you decide you want to do direct mail, you need money to buy your list and you need money for postage. But like I mentioned before, I've got one in particular investor that I have in mind who we've probably done a half a dozen deals with, and he primarily gets his leads free from Craigslist, and he does networking at the local RIA meeting. So it depends on how you decide to do your marketing. There are plenty of free or inexpensive ways. I mentioned LinkedIn and I mentioned Craigslist. I would not do Facebook anymore. Facebook kicked me off, okay? And what a lot of people don't realize is it has half of the viewers that it used to have because it kicked so many people off. So I would not use Facebook. We don't do any marketing on Facebook anymore. But I would use Craigslist. I'd use LinkedIn. Those would be very good, inexpensive ways for you to do your marketing. Okay.
All right. So let's see. Matt asked a question. I'm in my 50s and just getting started with an IRA. What's the best way to build it quickly?
You need to do what I did, and that is in the 2020 media set. That's why I thought I better make it available tonight. And I'm sorry we didn't have an actual presentation to show that to you, but Matthew, you did a great job. I'm glad we still had that available, that you could pull that up. So you can certainly flip notes in your IRA. Just have your IRA put the note under contract, sell it to another investor, and whatever your profit is, that would go into your self-directed IRA. You can also have your IRA borrow money to buy a note. If you see a note that you expect to pay off early, that you've bought at a large discount, instead of giving that discount away to an investor, you could borrow money from an investor and hold that note. Now, if you borrow the money in your IRA, you would probably end up paying UBIT, and that is the business tax. But it's still worth it because you wouldn't have any money going into your IRA if you didn't do it. But a better way even to do that would be to use the option what you could do is you could sell the entire note to your investor, and your IRA could hold an option to buy back part of it. And that is one of the ways that I put the 40,000 in. And I actually did realize, I think it was 19,000 that actually cash went into my IRA from those deals. So those are more sophisticated strategies, but they're an awesome way to build your self-directed IRA. Okay.
Okay, that's good. Let's see here. So I have some miscellaneous questions. Nikki asked, how much is your program to get started in the note business?
Well, I think
We just covered that, yeah.
we just came up with this special offer. You won't find a better offer than that. So I would jump on that.
Yeah, go with that. Let's see here. Laura asks, do you allow your students to invest with you? And if so, what are your thresholds and requirements?
When you say invest with me, no, I don't take on any investment partners. However, I'm always looking for people who would like to buy the notes that I'm buying if I'm flipping the note. So the best way to do that would be to fill out one of my investor profile forms, and you can go to the notebuyer.com / is that investor profile, Matthew? Is that right?
/investor.
/ investor, singular, right?
I've got both singular and plural.
Oh, good for you. Thank you for doing that. So if you go to the notebuyer.com / investor, and my investor profile form is there, that tells me what area of the country you prefer to invest in, how much you're looking to invest, and it gives me kind of the parameters that you're looking for. And when I have a note that I want to sell, I do go through those. And I would absolutely love to let you know if I have something that would meet your parameters.
Okay. Well, let's see. Tamara asks, as part of your coaching, will you locate an investor, or is that my responsibility and you'll help me?
No, that is part of what I offer as the easiest 1, 2, 3 coaching. We use my investors, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, in the master guide and in the 2019 media set, I do teach you how to find your own investors and how to work with them. But for your first deals, whatever you're submitting under the easiest 1, 2, 3 coaching, then by all means, we use my investors. You do not have to worry about that.
Okay. There's a few other questions that you've kind of already answered up till now, like best way to get started,
I think we covered that.
setting up and trust or LLC. So there's a few that sent some questions that were like duplicates. So I don't want you to feel that we skipped you, but like Sandy and others. Let's see. Okay, well, I think we are going to end with Justin's questions. Or he has one question here. Let's see. He said, thanks to your training, my partners and I have created a note buying LLC and are sending out our first postcard soon. We're really looking forward to it. Very cool. Good job. My question is about the forbearance on foreclosure due to COVID-19. Since foreclosures are not happening at the moment, wouldn't that mean that notes we buy right now have essentially no security?
Absolutely not. No way, no way, no way. First of all, it's a moratorium, which means that it's a temporary hold on it. It does not mean that you cannot foreclose. I think one of the key things that you need to know is that the Constitution of the United States protects individuals' contracts, and the government cannot issue any law that would impair a contract that you made, such as a note and a mortgage. Okay, so yes, in a national emergency, they can say, you know, we've got to stay on foreclosures. It's just a temporary time where you can't foreclose. But in the meantime, interest is still accruing on that note, and you still hold a lien. And when that moratorium is lifted, you can then foreclose and take the property, or you know, whatever you need to do. Negotiate and get a deed in lieu of foreclosure if you prefer. I think that what happens is that a lot of people are afraid of those kind of things. They hear moratorium and it scares them. And if you're not in the note business, you don't realize, like, one of the big things for me, uh, even last year, and I said this in my stimulus training, when I heard that there was a pandemic and the quarantine and all of that stuff going on, I kind of freaked out. And I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen to my notes that I'm holding? What if they quit paying? You know, what's that all about? Not one of my notes that I hold missed a payment. Not one. Now, I did have one that this is one where I had the option on it to buy the tail end of the note. Um, that woman lost her job and she had to move in with family members. Well, guess what she did? She didn't just sit back and let her mortgage go into default, particularly since the real estate market is on fire right now. She put her house up for sale and sold the house and paid off the note and walked away with, I don't know, $30,000 or $40,000 worth of equity. And so what you have to realize is, even like when I think back to 2008 and that whole marketplace, I mean, real estate was completely upside down then, but people didn't walk away from their homes. They have a vested interest. They've been making payments for many years. You know, they have a lot of money in it. They've made down payments on it. They've improved the property. And even though their houses were upside down, they didn't just walk away. So you have to really look at what it's like to be in their shoes. And so one of the things that we do when we're evaluating a note is we want to know how much down payment did they put up? Because if they don't have a vested interest, they are more likely to walk away. But that's part of our due diligence. So that's why I can stand here and very happily say that not one of my notes that I hold failed to make a payment. So that's all. That I just would not worry about that. It is not a matter that you do not have security. You absolutely still have security. Your note will continue to accrue interest. And I'll tell you what I would do is I would get with the homeowner and I would work out a modification, because most likely they don't want to lose the house. And if you recall in the stimulus program, what I actually did, I ran numbers and I said, okay, so I'll give you a 90-day moratorium and I'll add those 90 days of payments to the tail end. But all that time, interest is still accruing. And so there are other ways that you can accommodate people, even if there is a moratorium. And also that can vary from county to county. Some counties might just say, no foreclosures, you know, because of COVID and, you know, people will be out on the streets, whatever. But if that happens, you just deal with it. And if you've done a proper valuation, you should come out fine.
All right, so we got all the, let's see, I'm just looking through here. We've gotten through all the emailed questions. We got, I think, most of the, let's see, there was a question on how much your servicers usually cost and how do you find them? I think you just Google that, right? And what do they charge, a fee or a percentage of the payment, or?
No, they actually, there's a setup fee that varies. It can be $100, $200 to set up. Typically, the monthly fee is $18 to $20. If you're using a title company like First American Title, Pioneer Title out west, they're very popular and their fees are a little bit lower, like at least the ones that I've had, and it might be because they were established a long time ago. They're more like $15 a month, but most of them are around $18 to $20 a month. I would recommend note servicing center.com, and they're out of California, but they don't handle all states. So I would check with them. If they handle your state, that's who I would recommend. I know the man who started that company 30 years ago, Tom Standen. His grandson now runs the company. He passed away a number of years ago. I've recently talked to his grandson. I'm putting my notes with them now, provided they handle the states that I work in or that I'm holding notes in. If not, if you're looking for a nationwide one, I'm also using Evergreen. I have not used them yet. I just got their package and I am going to put a note with them. So those are two that I'd recommend. In Texas, there's Moat Servicing. I think they only handle Texas. But those are a couple to get you started. And then most of their things are a la carte. So if they have to send out extra things, you just pay, per item. Like I said earlier, if you're buying a note where the borrower is escrowing for taxes and insurance, you absolutely, positively want to use a servicer. If you're buying a note in Ohio, I would use a servicer. Ohio recently changed their laws and you cannot collect money on a note in Ohio unless you have a license, unless you are a licensed servicer. So I would use a servicer for your Ohio notes.
Cool. I think we pretty much got it. Deepali was asking about Craigslist strategies. I just want to share with you guys. He's off now, but he's going to watch the recording. What you can do is go on Craigslist, type in a search term. So promissory note, note for sale, owner financing, that's a hot one. Just a bunch of these different, you're trying to use language that note sellers would use. What's nice about Craigslist, a lot of people don't, you can save or bookmark the search results and just click the bookmark and it'll do the search again. So you don't have to go clicking on each city or whatever. You can also go to like in Google and do site with the semicolon and then Craigslist.org and then space and type in your search terms as well. And that will search all of it. So there'll be a broader net. But that's another option too. The key with Craigslist is checking on it consistently and even if you can do it multiple times a day, maybe once in the morning, once at night. But you want to get some kind of process going. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do that. It's just a matter of being consistent and, being thorough with your searching. And also something I've mentioned to him before, but it would be helpful to you guys as well, is you don't necessarily need to limit your searching to just straight up note for sale. There are a lot of people selling and doing a lot of real estate related things on there. Those are leads. Someone's a landlord and they're sending out rentals. Hey, do you happen to be holding a note and need some cash? So that's the personal networking thing there. So I hope that's helpful.
Great. Thank you for that, Matthew. Thank you.
Hey, Donna, there's also a few people asking about, getting just the master guide system. Maybe they don't want to get the whole bundle. Is it okay if we offer them a discount on just the master guide system too?
I don't know what's on the website. I'm sorry. In case you guys don't realize what's going on here, I have been so busy doing note deals that Matthew's been handling all my sales for me because I haven't had time. And so I'm sorry, I should know these things, but I've been too busy doing deals.
It's okay. Yeah, I think we'll be okay with doing that. What I'm going to do, guys, is I'll send out a follow-up email. We'll include just the different options that are available depending on where you're at and what you want. And we'll give you some kind of, Don will give you some kind of special offer on those so you can get back in the loop or get started with more, or whatever you want to do.
Okay, we'll figure out something for you, or just email us and let us know what you want to do. But I need to be consistent. I want to give you a special deal, but I gotta be consistent also. So we'll figure out something. We'll do something special for you.
Man, that was like 2 hours of just straight questions and answer. I love doing this stuff. And you're
I did
awesome.
too. I love this. I worry about all the technical questions because I'm afraid that it scares off new people. But what you got to know is the big thing is those things hardly ever come up. But at the same time, I want you to know about it, especially if you ask. But a bigger thing is that's why I have the easy as 1, 2, 3 coaching. And so with that, I mean, it just doesn't get any easier. You focus on the marketing, you find the deal, you fill out the submission form and email it over to me. And from that point on, I walk you through everything. So I'm going to make sure that it's set up right. I will structure the deal. I handle all the paperwork. I do all of that. I orchestrate the closing with the title company. I get the investor. We use my investors. So it is absolutely hands down the best way to learn. And then you get real life experience, the street smarts on how to do the notes. And that's really absolutely the best way to learn. So like I said, even though we got in the weeds on some things here, know that the chances of you ever dealing with those things is very slim. And especially if you are using your easiest 1, 2, 3 coaching, because I handle all of those things for you. Matthew, would you please, maybe you've already done this, but make sure that people know where to go for that special offer. What address do they need to go to take care of the 997 if they want the option?
Put it in the chat. I'm also going to send an email to everyone with the different.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, the 997 on the 2020 media set, that is a real steal because that was one of the most fun trainings I've ever done. It was also probably more work than most of them because it was not my standard academy where I just taught, like I try to be as comprehensive as possible. I had specific things that I was doing there, and I think you'll really enjoy them. Whether you're a beginner, if you're a beginner, you'll love the evaluating 5 notes. And if you're wanting the more sophisticated strategies, by all means, you should jump on that. Okay.
Getting a lot of people saying thank you, Donna.
Very welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for being on tonight. I'm excited that so many people have gotten on board with me, and I'm excited that I'm getting deals coming in and really looking forward to wrapping some of these up and helping you guys make some money. It's pretty awesome. It's a good time to be doing notes, let me tell you. So I'm glad you're on board. And if you have any other questions, just email us at info@thenotebuyer.com. I'm right here for you. And so is Matthew. I speak for him. So.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks for spending your evening with us. Donna, thank you. Good job. We are going to sign off.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being on.
Good night.